Another episode of Game of Thrones, and this week we got a doozy. We got a 90-minute, or at least 80-minute episode in the Battle of Winterfell. The episode is called The Long Night, and as you know in Game of Thrones, the night is dark and full of terrors, and this video will be long and full of spoilers, so you are warned if you haven't seen this episode. And let me just start with this disclaimer, because this episode doesn't really allow for a structured review. It's just the Battle of Winterfell. What we can talk about is like the moments where people die, and spoilers, people die. Also spoilers, I was very wrong last week when I bet that Grey Worm and Podrick were for sure going to die, and for sure they didn't die. So you can laugh at me in the comments as I laughed at myself. Throughout the entire episode, this was a one-sided fight. The Whites were winning. They were just coming on and on and on. I mean, the Dothrakis disappear in the beginning of the episode, and they're supposed to be the most fearsome warriors in all of Westeros and Easteros and whatever. So I almost don't want to say that there's a sense of desperation, but there's this sense of certainty almost that the people at Winterfell are going to lose. And most of, if not all of the people we know and love are going to fucking die. I think that's good. I think that's an amazing feeling to get from an episode such as this that is so long but earns that runtime throughout. Such great moments with the Night King, with Jon, with Dany, with Sansa and Tyrion, with Bran, and of course we'll talk about it with Arya fucking Stark, my main girl in this whole show. If she wasn't before, she certainly is now. There are big moments, but I first want to discuss like my favorite sequences, just like in terms of filmmaking. And those were Arya specifically when she goes to the library and she's surrounded by Whites there and she has to be very stealthy. I just love everything in that sequence. Love the moment where she comes face to face with the Hound and Beric eventually sacrifices himself. I knew Beric was going to die as well. I bet on him last week, so it wasn't that surprising, and it was a really great death that served the story, and his character ultimately finished his arc because of what eventually follows. Another favorite sequence of mine was when Jon Snow is trying to cross Winterfell to get to Bran, and everything is being torn apart by the Whites and by dead half-faced Viserion, who's spitting blue fire into everywhere. And this is a sequence where the camera almost doesn't cut. I mean, we cut to other scenes in between this, but the scene itself has no cuts that I can remember. It's just this continuous shot of the cameraman, who was in a Steadicam, I assume, walking over all these piles of bodies of the extras who were there. And it was just amazing filmmaking in itself. And before we get to like the big deaths, the big moments in this episode, I want to talk about my one issue with it all. And it's an issue that bothered me from the start, but the more and more I think about this, it really bothers me, and that is Melisandre. I have several questions about Melisandre, and she comes in from the north, where the Whites and the White Walkers and the Night King were. Where was she? Why was she there? How did she get there? How long has she been there? And what was she doing there? Like, just waiting? Oh, the Night King is coming. Here I go to Winterfell. Tell your men to raise their swords. Boom. They're fire. But they served absolutely no purpose. So basically, Melisandre lights up the swords of the Dothraki. I know they have specific names, the sword, like the cursed sword, but I can't remember what they are. And they do nothing, and basically the Dothraki have been decimated now, so Daenerys just has the Unsullied and the Iron Fleet, whatever is left of it in the Iron Islands with Yara. And I just remembered a small problem I have with this is that this show treats Ghost, the only direwolf left alive, like shit. I mean, granted, he is the only one left alive, but still the show treats him like shit. He goes into this battle right next to Jorah at the beginning and with the Dothraki, and then we see Jorah coming back. We see a few Dothraki coming back on foot, but we don't see Ghost. Is Ghost dead? I assume not, because this show has this tendency to just, boom, here's Ghost. You thought he was dead, you thought you forgot about him, we haven't, he's there. So I'm just assuming he's going to show up somewhere in the next episode on the corner of the screen and you'll see, oh, there he is, he's alive. As well as the dragons. I thought at least Rhaegal was dead in this episode. He crashes with Jon Snow jumps off of him, and it's nighttime. throughout this whole episode, so you can't really tell the difference between the dragons. It's hard already during the day, at least between Viserion and Rhaegal. Drogon is clearly the biggest of them, so there's a difference there. But in this one, no. The only clues were Daenerys, she's on top of Drogon, Jon, he's on top of Rhaegal, and the Night King, he's on top of Viserion. Cool, but apart from that, they all look the same. Well, Viserion has like these little holes on his wings, and eventually he gets his face, half of his face cut off. He doesn't have a tongue, he doesn't have his jaw. He looks awesome, he looks badass, but I mean, poor thing. Poor animal. So let's talk big deaths. Beric Dondarrion, he dies, it makes total sense, it serves the story. Kudos to the writers of this episode and the show itself. Lyanna Mormont has an awesome death. Lyanna Mormont, Slayer of Giants, who even comes back afterwards as a White herself. Though we only see her opening her eyes, I don't remember actually seeing her like walking like a White, but she has an awesome death. I love it. And as soon as the episode started and the first shot that we see her in, I was like, oh yeah, you're probably going to die. You're most likely going to die today. And she does. Before we move on to other deaths, I just have to mention the moments where the Hound saves Arya and he brings her to the big banquet room, I guess. Well, the big hall, of course, the big hall. I was blanking on that. And she meets Melisandre again, which I had completely forgotten about that they met before. So they just basically repeat the dialogue from their first meeting. And I was like, blue eyes. Okay, so Arya has to kill Cersei, because Cersei has blue eyes, I think. For some reason I can remember that the White Walkers, the Night King, and the others have blue eyes, for fuck's sake. So that one is on me. Also, thankfully, Jaime didn't die. Again, Podrick didn't die, but Ed, I completely forgot about Ed. Ed died. He was the first one to die in this episode. He was one that I was sure was going to die, and I was right on that one. He also comes back, but you don't see him as a White, you just see him opening his eyes. I like the moments in here where we follow Sam's perspective, because Sam, he just has a breakdown throughout this episode. And there's a moment where Jon is coming in to Winterfell, he's going to cross Winterfell to get to the Old Woods, to get to Bronn, and he sees just Sam under these pile of bodies, and he's crying, he's breaking down, and Jon's looking at him. You see that Jon is pissed that he cannot help Sam, but he has his priorities straight. I love that moment. I love you, Sam, you're my best friend, but the priority is Bran right now, and I like that this character has that straight. Another big moment after the dragons fight with each other and they crash land and whatnot, the Night King's just standing there, he's fallen off Viserion, and Daenerys on top of Drogon, Dracarys his ass, and he lives. He's intact after getting all that fire on top of him. It's a great moment. And they play it out until you're not sure what they're going to do. Because the way they play it, the way they cut it, the choice of shots in that moment, it's like, oh, okay, so he's going to be alive, he's going to be intact. But then they play it another way when they show Jon Snow's perspective looking at the fire. He's like, or maybe it's not. Maybe they want us to think that and he is going to be actually dead. But no, he is alive, blah, blah. He starts walking towards Winterfell, but first he throws this spear that Drogon just very quickly dodges. But the Night King just does this, and the dead start to rise. It's an incredibly tense moment. Jon Snow is just surrounded. Eventually, Daenerys goes to help him, and she falls off Drogon, because Drogon starts getting this swarm of Whites on top of him, cutting him, slashing him, and I'm like, fly away, spit fire on their ass. What the hell are you doing? So eventually he does fly away, and Daenerys is on her own, and in comes a White, but Jorah is there to save the day, and eventually we do say goodbye to good old Sir Jorah, because now he's going to play Bruce Wayne. It's a moment we were all expecting, eventually at least. We knew Jorah was going to die, and we knew he was going to die saving Daenerys at some point. I just love this moment that they have together, fighting together. Even though Daenerys is not a fighter, she knows she's not a fighter. I heard people complaining that, oh, where's your dragon now, bitch, blah, blah. She's not a fighter. She was never meant to be a fighter, so of course she doesn't fight. She does her best. She can swing a sword, doesn't mean she can fight. Whatever. They both get as far away from the Whites as they can, but eventually Jorah gets sliced up, protecting Daenerys. He dies, unfortunately. There's this moment where we just hear music, because people have started to come out of their coffins in the crypt. I don't know if they're called coffins back then, I don't know. And everyone is scared shitless. Tyrion and Sansa are hiding behind one of the caskets and they're holding hands. It's like Tyrion is Sansa's new gay best friend, even though he's not gay, he's her ex-husband, which is kind of funny that way. And Sansa takes out the blade that Arya gave her, and she told Sansa to stick him with a pointy end. It's that simple to use a dagger. And she's ready to fight, so is Tyrion. Tyrion's actually ready to die. And eventually they don't, because at the same time the Night King has made it to the Old Wood. The men of the Aran Islands have died, there are no more arrows, and Tyrion has his last moment with Bronn, where Bronn tells him, "You're a good man, thank you." Which is a great moment, and I know I'm in the minority, but I never forgave Theon for what he did, so I'm just glad he died. But the moment between them, let's talk about the moment between them, because at one point they are surrounded by whites, they are surrounded by like the main generals of the Night King that are there in front of him, and eventually the Night King arrives and he's just looking on. And when Bronn talks to Theon, I thought Theon's probably going to kill Bronn. They talked about this, kill Bronn so the Night King doesn't get him or his power, the power of the three-eyed raven. So there's this moment where I thought, okay, he's going to kill Bronn. It's going to be actually a very good solution to this problem. Either that or Daenerys was eventually going to come and she's like, fuck this, kill the kid, because she doesn't care about Bronn. But nothing like that happens. Theon goes to the Night King, tries to pierce him with a lance, and the Night King breaks it and pierces Theon with it. I'm very happy that he's dead. I don't like this character. I fucking hate him. I know I'm in the minority, but that's just how I feel. So Theon dies, he's looking on, and in comes the Night King just standing there in front of Bran. He's ready to kill him, I think. So if he kills Bran, he gets his power nonetheless. I don't know. So maybe the Theon killing him thing wouldn't be a solution. But everybody's fucked up. Jon can't get to the Old Wood because he's trapped in front of Viserion. But eventually he's ready to face him. Viserion with his like half mouth opening it up and trying to spit fire towards Jon. He's ready for it. Everyone is ready at this moment to die. And out of the shadows, you see one of the generals, like his hair flowing a little bit in the wind, and suddenly Arya shows up in midair behind the Night King and he grabs her throat in the air, and I yelled out in this moment, "Motherfuckers!" because I thought they were going to kill Arya. At that moment, that nanosecond when he grabs her, I genuinely thought they were going to end this episode killing Arya and the Night King taking Bran, and they win. But they didn't, because Arya drops the Valyrian steel knife and pierces it on the same area that the Children of the Forest pierced it to create the Night King. So the Night King shatters into pieces of ice and everyone just shatters. Every one of his generals, every one of the whites go down, including the people who had just come back after being killed. So does Viserion. A great moment. I loved everything about it. Again, my two big issues, okay, one big issue is just the whole Melisandre thing, who eventually goes out there and my purpose is fulfilled. I'm going to take my necklace off and become an old woman, even though some episodes a few seasons ago I didn't have my necklace on and I was still like this. And another moment is how they mistreat Ghost. But that's it. I love this battle. I love the character moments we got for the characters that matter going forward. Glad Brienne isn't dead. I kind of knew, I was willing to bet that she would die, but I kind of knew she has to protect Jaime after this battle when they go to King's Landing. So Jaime doesn't die either, Podrick doesn't die, Grey Worm doesn't die, Jorah, Lyanna, so the Mormonts are gone, Beric Dondarrion, Theon, Ed, and I think that's it. So 5 deaths, 5 more or less significant characters, at least Jorah and Lyanna are for sure significant characters. So I really like this episode. But I won't say I prefer it to last week's one, funny enough. I thought this was for sure going to be in like top 3, if not the best episode of Game of Thrones ever. It's a fantastic episode, don't get me wrong. I just prefer the one from last week. So maybe this one also makes it into the top 5, but I just don't know yet. So this was a great episode, great character moments, great moments of enthusiasm, of dread, of fear, of excitement, of adrenaline. Just, it had everything. It had great moments, very well executed. The filmmaking on this is just stupid good, because I can't imagine like the cinematographers, the ACs on this, like walking around the piles of bodies on extras when they weren't cutting on scenes. So let me know what you guys thought of Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night, and let me know what are your predictions going forward. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are the best. I'll see you next week, and tonight we'll have our live Avengers Endgame spoiler discussion at 8 p.m. GMT, London time. Check your times in America, in Australia, in Japan, wherever you are. And thank you so much once again, you guys are the best. So until the next video, stay beautiful and stay geeky. And if you haven't done so yet, click the subscribe button, click the bell, so you can be geeky united.